Hello everybody, welcome to Calls. This is the 2023 American Express Initial Research Show. We got a lot to get into, an exciting finish to the Sony Open, which means I have some shout outs to give. First off, to my friend Dave, who had a top 10 wager on Hayden Buckley. That clearly hit. I think he was ruining not betting him to win for a while, and then he's thankful that he didn't in the end. But congratulations, Dave, on the top 10 hit for Hayden Buckley. But for the second week in a row, the big winner is Bombacall. Last week she had a top 50 lineup in a GPP. This weekend she better than doubles that. She has a lineup that finishes in the top 20. Almost 1,000% return on investment. It was quite a weekend, exciting, especially today. All the ups and downs and watching that player, this player, and all that. So congratulations to Mama Call and to Dave for the fantastic weekends that you all had. And of course, if you have a winner, let me know in chat or in the comments or on social media. However you can get a hold of me, I want to be able to shout out all of the community that has winners. So congratulations to you two. Me personally, I did have a top 20 on SH Kim, so that certainly mitigated some of the losses that I accrued for weekend golf. Weekend golf, this was probably my worst showing yet. Don't think I got too much correct. Hideki went low yesterday and then backed up today. Harris English didn't have a good weekend. Troy Merritt didn't have a good weekend. These were players that I was really high on. Just not a good showing in weekend golf at all. And in terms of the full week, hopefully you duplicated Mama Call's success. A little bit of mine. I had the right players, not in the right combinations. I had a little bit of Siwoo Kim. I had a lot of SH Kim. I was really high on Robbie Shelton, who missed the cut. Nick Hardy was good, but not great. Grayson Sigg, much the same. Corey Connors was good. So quite a bit of mixed results. Tom Kim, Sung J M had enough of them to kill any lineups that had any dreams of high finishes. So in the comments, let me know how your lineups did this week. And all of that. But for me personally, bit of a losing weekend. A lot of it centered around weekend golf. Was just not a good performance there for me in that regard. But I did have a top 20 on SH Kim. Corey Connors was pretty solid. Was really high on him. I was really high on Siwoo. Was really high on KH Lee. So I was pretty happy with the performance overall. Like I said, DFS, I just did not have the right players and the right combinations. But we'll move forward to the American Express and to look to duplicate the success that we have had in terms of the Hawaiian Double. So let's get into it. All statistics provided tonight and every night are from FantasyNational.com. It is the best tool out there. It's simply well worth your investment. It's going to make you a much better gambler, a much smarter DFS player, and they're also working on a special project. So now is a great time to join Fantasy National if you are not a member. I cannot stress it enough. It is simply, I believe, the best tool out there. I can't speak tonight. Go check them out. In the description to the video, there are links to all of my social media, Twitter, Instagram, and Twitch. Twitter and Instagram, this is where I post a lot of the research that I do during the week, and post my betting cards to Twitter Wednesday evenings before the tournaments. And then Twitch is where I do a lot of in-depth research. So if you want to see a part of that, you want to see the in-depth research, I should say, give me a follow over at Twitch. We're definitely going to be doing that tomorrow, examining the Sony and looking at the American Express in terms of winners and course and all that stuff. So give me a follow there. And then finally, we're live. Chat is open. Again, want to hear from you all. How was your Sony? Hopefully you had a lot better weekend golf or showdown success than I did, and were able to duplicate a lot of the winning lineups. You used quite a bit of Siwoo Kim. You used quite a bit of Corey Connors and Ben Griffin, David Lipsky, who I also mentioned on Wednesday evening. So a lot of good. Hopefully you avoided the bad, as in Robbie Shelton, Tom Kim, all of that. So let me know in chat. Want to hear from you all, and I also want to hear what you're looking forward to in terms of the American Express. How much do you know of the tournament? All of that good stuff. So let's get into it. Let's do our initial research for the 2023 American Express. And we're going to start, as we always do, on a Sunday evening with the GCSAA tournament fact sheet. The American Express has been a number of different things. It's been the Humana Challenge, the Career Builder Challenge, lots and lots of different things over the years. But most recently, and currently sponsored by the American Express, we are in La Quinta, California. This is one of 2 tournaments on the PGA Tour that is a 3-course rotation, or a 3-course rota. And what do I mean by that? That means this is a 54-hole cut. So players playing this week are guaranteed 54 holes. The main course, and the course that will be played on Sunday, is the Pete Dye Stadium course, PGA West. The other 2 are the Jack Nicklaus Tournament course, which has been used for a long time here. And the third and final course is the La Quinta Country Club. Now, this current setup of these 3 specific courses have been used since 2016. Minus 2021, when the course went to a just a 2-course rota for the pandemic and all of that. But since 2016, this has been the 3-course rota here at the American Express. Again, the main course, the Pete Dye Stadium course at PGA West. You see it as a par 72, measures just under 7,200 yards, small-ish greens, about 5,000 square feet, where the average PGA Tour green is about 5,500 to 6,000 square feet. Not a lot of fairway, a whole lot of rough, plus you have quite a bit of water in play at PGA West. The 2 main, or probably signature holes at PGA West, I believe is the 15th or 16th. It has the 25-foot bunker to the left of the green, and then PGA West also has an island green, which I believe is also the 17th. But we are going to be on Bermuda throughout the majority of this 3-course rotation, including entirely at the stadium course, Bermuda greens, Bermuda fairways, approaches, rough. Everything at the Pete Dye Stadium course is Bermuda. The Nicklaus Tournament course, of course, Architect Jack Nicklaus, is a par 72, measures to just under 7,150 yards. So again, 2 shorter courses, especially for par 72s. Now the difference here, the Jack Nicklaus Tournament course is 7,000 square feet. So just on the other, or the same amount to the opposite end of the spectrum in terms of green size in relation to the average tour green. 5,000 at the main stadium course, 7,000 here at the Nicklaus Tournament course. The same amount of fairway, not as much rough, 5 holes with water in play. And also at the Nicklaus Tournament course, you are on Bermuda throughout the entirety of the course, just like the Pete Dye Stadium course. Greens, fairways, rough, all Bermuda. But you see the Bermuda rough on these 2 courses are extremely short, 2 inches at most. Fairways are cut pretty short. Of course, you generally plays pretty fast and firm. And then finally, lastly, kind of the outlier of the 3 courses, La Quinta Country Club is a par 72, quite a bit shorter than the other 2. at about 7,060 yards. Stimp measures to 11.5. You notice that it is the only course that they have a Stimp listed. This would put it right on the border between average and fast. But here's the difference with La Quinta. Their greens are POA overseeded with rye. So a lot of times they're going to play like POA. The La Quinta Country Club average green size, the smallest of the three, at almost 4,800 square feet, so pretty small, especially in terms of the average PGA Tour green. Not a lot of fairway, but a whole lot less rough than the other two courses. You have 7 holes with water in play, and in addition to the greens being POA, you have the fairways are Bermuda, and the rough is Bermuda as well. So the difference here with La Quinta, the greens are POA. They are quite small in terms of the other two courses, especially. That's by far the shortest course. Astro, thanks for jumping in chat. How are you? Doing well. Hopefully your weekend was a successful one in terms of Showdown and wagers and whatnot. But thanks for jumping into Twitch chat. So there's a look at the 3 courses that we are going to be looking at this week. The Pete Dye Stadium course, Jack Nicklaus Tournament course, and La Quinta Country Club. Not sure how much we want to focus on Architect of Pete Dye. Now, the players that do make the cut, they will play the Pete Dye Stadium course 2 of the 4 rounds. Maybe. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Found me on Twitter. I'm trying to be more active on Twitter. Social media is not my strong suit. But I'm glad that something that I have put out there caught your attention. I'm trying to get better at social media. It's just not my thing. But like I mentioned, with the 54-hole cut that this is this week, I don't want to do much with or anything with Jack Nicklaus. The players are only going to play that course one time. They're only going to play La Quinta one time. If they do make the cut, they're going to play Pete Dye twice. So we might look at that. I am still kind of in the air about that. Would be interested in your take. Put it in chat or put it in the comments. But all 3 courses are short, and there's also another commonality between the courses when we move over to Fantasy National. So let's do that. We're going to go on over to Fantasy National. As you can see, I went ahead and have set the custom filter from the beginning of 2022 to include last week's Tournament of Champions. No other filters. We took a look at this on Friday evening in the Friday Night Chill stream. A loaded field so far for the American Express. A loaded field. Scotty Scheffler, John Rahm, a previous winner here, Will Zalatoris, Tony Finau, Patrick Cantlay, Xander, Sungjae, Tom Kim, Cameron Young, Tom Hoagie, Taylor Montgomery, who again had another fantastic week at the Sony. Andrew Putnam coming off a fantastic week. Cameron Davis, just a loaded field for the Amex this week. So one of the strongest fields that I have ever seen for this particular tournament, which is great. Again, as I've mentioned a couple times now for the PGA, that these, I don't want to call them lesser events, but these non-premier events are still able to draw big names with the upcoming schedule change. So I just think it's fantastic for the PGA Tour and fantastic for golf in general. So there's a look at a few of the players in the field. Before we go too much further, let's go, I'm going to bring up that tab, but I'm going to go to the course breakdown on Fantasy National. Again, we're going to only focus on the Pete Dye Stadium course, but I did make sure to take some notes from the other 2 in terms of La Quinta and the Jack Nicklaus tournament course, but we're going to focus or put all of our attention this week on the stadium course, since the players who make the cut will be playing this on Sunday. So first thing I like to do, let's take a look at the 9th and 10th most difficult holes, figure out where par is. We see the 9th is still under par, but look at this. The 10th most difficult hole plays to a more than a 10th of a shot under par. More than a 10th of a shot under par for supposedly a hole that is right in the middle of the difficulty spectrum. That tells you a whole lot about the tournament. The 8th most difficult hole is where you cross over to par. But if we take a look at, say, the easiest hole here, plays to a half a shot under par. You have the 17th most difficult hole, almost 4/10, whereas the most difficult hole, it does play to a quarter of a shot over par, the difficult par 3, but you very, very quickly get much closer to par. The second most difficult, 1500ths, and then you drop immediately into 800ths, 800ths, 800ths. The birdies and the eagles here will far outweigh the bogeys. So there's a look at some of the scorecard. Not a lot of eagle chances, even though these par 5s aren't terribly long. They are great birdie chances, almost 50%, almost 40%. But they are not great eagle chances. They're just very scoreable. Now you do have some big numbers in here from holes with water in play. Again, the 17th, the island green can bring in some bigger numbers. The par 3 6th plays very difficult. Par 3 13th plays very difficult. Very difficult. That's just with the water in play on those holes. So the par 3s are pretty challenging at the stadium course, but otherwise it's a very, very, very gettable course. We move to the average strokes gained by shot type. For the top 10s, as I was mentioning in the GCSA tournament fact sheet portion, ball strikers course, especially for the top 10s. You see approach 1 1/4 off the tee, and this is the lowest it's going to be. The around the green, this is the highest it's going to be. So this is the closest that the two graphs here will be. Apologies, let me center this camera just a bit. It's a ball striking course. We move to the top 5s. You see just how much the approach jumps, almost a quarter of a shot. The around the green shrinks in importance. The off the tee gains in importance. Now the winners, if you're winning the tournament, you're going to be making putts, so it's going to catch up to the approach, but it still doesn't in terms of overall. And you see the around the green bar for winners is basically non-existent. This is a ball striking course. If we move to top 10s and go down to average strokes gained by hole by par, of course, on an easy course, you're going to have to take advantage of the par 5. That's where a lot of the scoring happens. But as we saw in the actual scorecard, 4 of the 5 toughest holes are the par 3s. Maybe 4 of the toughest 6. So there's the second most difficult. Okay, so the 11th is somewhat easy, but you've got the second most difficult hole, the most difficult hole, and the 5th most difficult hole. So 3 of the 5 most difficult holes, not 4 of the 6. 3 of the 5 most difficult are the par 3s. So you're going to have to play them well. And if you do play them at par or maybe even 1 under, you're gaining a whole lot of shots on the field. And then the par 4s, not to say that they're diminished, but par 5s and par 3s are certainly more important for the players that are finishing in the top 10. Top 5 starts to even out quite a bit, but still a pretty big importance on these par 3s. And then for the winners, they are really taking advantage of the par 3s. So we will see when we move to Microsoft Excel just how much, and see if we can glean any further information from these graphs. But par threes are going to be a pretty big importance this week. We move to hole composition. Now this is specifically for the stadium course. You have two par threes measure 150 to 175, then a medium length and a fairly long one. You do have a semi-drivable par 4, 0 to 350, and then 3 par 4s each, measuring 350 to 4, 400 to 450, and 450 to 5. So again, when we move to Microsoft Excel, we'll see if we can discern which, if any, of these lengths are most important. And then the 4 par 5s are divvied up as such: 1 short par 5, and then 3 from 550 to 6. But again, this is just specifically for the stadium course. For the Jack Nicklaus tournament course, the par 3s measure the same: 2, 1, and 1. The difference here is at the Nicklaus tournament course, you've got 5 par 4s from 400 to 450. And then you have these 2 bars are reversed at the Nicklaus tournament course, 3 here and 1 here. And then for La Quinta, you have 3 par 3s that measure 200 to 225. But you have the majority of the par 4s at La Quinta measure 350 to 4 and 400 to 450. So there's going to be a big emphasis this week on 400 to 450, which makes some sense when you take a step back and think about it. All 3 of these courses are short, at least defined by Fantasy Nationals terms, less than 7,200 yards. So they're short. And if you're going to squeeze in par 72s into a short course, you're going to have to put in some extremely short par 3s or some extremely short par 4s or 5s or whatnot. They're doing it in the par 4s. So a lot of emphasis here in the 400 to 450 this week. And then just to round out the thought, for La Quinta, all 4 par 5s fall 500 to 550, at least on the scorecard. So I wanted to give you that information as you begin your research this week. I'm going to suggest that you put a lot of your emphasis in the 400 to 450 par 4s, players who play that well, and the short par 5s, particularly the 500 to 550, but 550 to 6 does have its merits as well. Now, we come back talking specifically just about the stadium course. Approach shot distribution, the majority of the approach shots here come from 150 to 175. Again, a lot of similarities to YLI in terms of yardage. So you don't hit driver off every par 4. You just don't. There are some forced layups and dog legs and whatnot. So the majority of approach shots come from there. Most of the par 5s are attackable, so that is what's really pushing the 200 plus up. But in terms of the average tour event, you've got a lot of 75 to 100 as well. Again, when I'm speaking direct or in reference to the average tour event. So we'll see if this plays a factor in terms of upper leaderboard success, especially tomorrow in the Data Dive show. That's when I handle a lot of the proximities. But to begin your research, the majority of approach shots, a quarter of them, basically to be exact, come from 150 to 175. We move to the historic cut line. Again, don't take this as very, very easy. This is a 3-day cut, but it has been -6 the past 2 years, -5. It's been all the way as low as -9. This is still an easy tournament, but remember, this is over 3 rounds, not 2. So it's not the fact that every single hole is a birdie opportunity, seemingly. It is still an easy course. It's averaging -2 being the cut per day, essentially, but it is still an easy course. And you can see that here, 23% birdies versus 11.5, I'll be generous rounding up, 11.5. Now you do have a decent little bit of a doubles bar here just because of the amount of water in play. But even if you add those two together, you're not going to equal the birdies. So it's an easy course, and the other two play easier than the stadium course. So you get birdies quite a bit here at this tournament. Driving accuracy, a little bit less than the average tour event. You kind of saw that at the Sony. Even though guys weren't hitting the fairways, if they weren't terribly far offline, it wasn't too penal. That's kind of the case here. The rough and whatnot isn't generally difficult to play out of. Now, if you make it all the way out to the native area, then yes, it can get pretty difficult. But generally speaking, these are pros. They're generally not going to be too far offline. Driving accuracy isn't the biggest deal here. Green and regulation percentage, about tour average. And since these greens are smaller than the average tour green, kind of also explains to you the ease of the course and all that. And scrambling, players are generally much more successful scrambling here. 3 putts, pretty non-existent. Distance, as I was speaking to, not really a big factor. You don't hit driver off every par 4. So there are some strategic holes where you want to have placement, as is a Pete Dye design. Sometimes it's better to be in the right rough than the left fairway, and vice versa, all that, depending on the hole. It's just the beauty of a Pete Dye design. So distance really isn't that big of a deal either. So when you see accuracy not high, distance not high, yet off the tee is a factor, there's something going on there, and we'll definitely dig into that. And then finally, we'll round it out with average green and regulation proximity, slightly closer to the hole than the average tour event by about a foot. So a decent little amount, but nothing that screams that proximity is going to be a huge factor, or at least green and regulation proximity. So there's a look at the stadium course specifically in terms of a scorecard and graphical view. I also gave you a few notes about the Nicklaus Tournament course and La Quinta. I'll be more than happy to go over those as well, or put it in the comments if is needed. It's also available if you are a member at Fantasy National. Nicklaus Tournament course and La Quinta are available. Another just reason why I highly recommend that you go to Fantasy National. It has everything that you need. We're just going to be focusing on the stadium course this week, since that is where the players that make the cut are going to be playing. So now let's move to the strokes gained page view for Fantasy National in this week's field. First thing that I always like to look at, let's look at Bermuda greens putting. And we know that we're on Bermuda from the GCSA tournament fact sheet. So your top Bermuda green putters since the start of 2022 are Martin Traynor, Sam Burns, Brian Gay, Brendan Todd, Bo Hostler, Richie Wierenski, Denny McCarthy, Troy Merritt, Justin Rose, and Harry Hall. Now, of course, this will probably update a little bit tomorrow once the Sony is loaded in. I am quite curious to see if the greens did play fast like I thought they would. They appeared to, especially on Thursday and Friday, and then it almost seemed like they slowed down. So I'm curious to see how Fantasy National classifies those greens from this past week. But let's go ahead and take a look at some historic course conditions as well. You see, we don't have shot link for the Nicklaus Tournament course or La Quinta. So that's why I only focus on the stadium course, because there's not nearly as much information available on the other two courses. But anything that we have gotten in terms of green speeds has always been average. We've always been on less than 7,200 in the, what's this now, 8 years that we've had this specific configuration, La Quinta, Nicklaus, and PGA West, or the Pete Dye Stadium course. And you can see, with the exception of a round or two, it's generally played easy. You've had one difficult round, and that was last year. You had one difficult round at the Nicklaus tournament course, and that's when the winds picked up a little bit. Otherwise, a lot of easy, maybe a little bit of average, especially if the wind picks up, but a whole lot of easy. And then rough links are always short as well. So I am going to do what I did for my research last Tuesday. I didn't mean to unclick that. I'm just an idiot. Green speeds. Let's look at average speed Bermuda greens. However, I am going to need to increase the size of the sample just to get statistically significant amounts of data. You see the most rounds is 18. That probably is enough, but it's only one player. So I would like to get more than just one player statistically significant. So let's go ahead and look at the past 2 years. On average speed Bermuda greens. And while we only are getting maybe a third of the field, it's certainly a lot better than one. So it's going to have to do, I don't like going back too far either. But specifically on average speed Bermuda greens, your top putters have been Austin Cook, Brendan Todd, Aaron Baddeley, Patrick Cantley, Ben Taylor, Robert Streb, Michael Thompson, Harry Hall, Jason Duffner, Martin Traynor, Kevin Tway, and John Rahm. Interesting to see John Rahm. I would have thought that he was better. No? Okay. I guess he has performed better when it's been average speeds. You see the TOC, the Amex, and then this year's Century. And the putting here. Been much better when it is slower. So there's a look at your top average speed Bermuda green players, or Bermuda green putters, I should say. Now let's look at some just kind of overall metrics, just to get a feel for how players have been, generally speaking, on the 3 courses that are going to be featured here. So first thing I want to do, we know that all 3 of these courses are defined as short, at least by Fantasy Nationals terms, less than 7,200 yards. So on short courses in 2022, your top performers were Patrick Cantley, Brian Harmon, JT Poston, Xander, Andrew Putnam, Keith Mitchell, Wyndham Clark, Ben Griffin, Patrick Rogers, and Matthew Neesmith. JT Poston, who had a pretty strong Sony, all things considered, generally likes shorter courses. Brian Harmon, he's never the longest. He does his best work when it's short. Patrick Rogers, the same. Ben Griffin, his little time on the PGA Tour, where has he played well? Wyndham, short. Bermuda, short. And in the Sony this week, I believe he shot double digits under. I think he was 11, maybe 12 under. Also short. So he has shown himself to be a short course preferred type player. Andrew Putnam, quite the same. So there's some names to start your research off in terms of short courses. We're also going to look at easy. We saw that from the historic conditions. These 3 courses are pretty easy for professionals. So in 2022, your top players when a round was easy were Tom Kim, John Rahm, Patrick Cantley, Tom Hoagie, Tony Finau, Andrew Putnam, Will Gordon, Scotty Scheffler, Brian Harmon, David Lipsky, and Patrick Rogers. So already you're getting some overlap here on the short and the easy. Patrick Cantley was there on both of those. Andrew Putnam, I believe, was 5th or 6th when it was short. So he really likes the courses here, or the course layouts, I should say, short, generally easy, that is featured here at the Amex. Brian Harmon, Patrick Rogers. These names were up there when it was short as well. So quite a few names there to start your week off in terms of research, especially in a strokes gained total or total performance purview, if you will. I'm going to remove the filters. We've seen that this is a ball striking course. I generally don't look at ball striking in of itself. I like to separate out off the tee and approach, especially since we saw from the graphs in the breakdown, while off the tee did measure, decently high graphically, accuracy wasn't it and distance wasn't it. So there's something going on there, which I believe Excel will be able to help us sift through. So that's why I generally like to separate out categories. So I'm going to narrow this in to just the fall forward. From the Fortinet in September to essentially last week's Tournament of Champions, your top off-the-tee players have been Taylor Pendrith, John Rahm, Kevin Yu, Sung Jae, Keith Mitchell, Davis Thompson, Dean Burmester, Will Gordon, Scotty Scheffler, and Brent Grant. Now, none of those same 10 are going to be top 10 in approach. None, which is surprising, but is what it is. And I'm double checking just to make sure I don't have any filters. Now, if you scroll across, you do have quite a few honorable mentions here. Ben Taylor, who again had a solid Sony, top 25 in both. Tony Finau's top 15 in both. Joel Damon is top 15 in both off the tee and approach, leading to his being number 2 in ball striking. Jason Day has also been top 20 in both, specifically top 10 in approach. So I will sort on the approach, but I just wanted to give you an overlook of ball striking in general. When talking strokes gained approach alone, Tom Hoagie, Matthew Neesmith, Russell Knox, Tom Kim, Adam Hadwin, Siwoo, which I imagine this will go up. I haven't seen a whole lot of the in-tournament statistics since Friday evening, but if you win a tournament, you're probably hitting your irons at least field average, if not better. Joel Damon, Jason Day, Ben Griffin, and Davis Riley are your top 10 since the start of the PGA Tour season, dating back to the Fortinet in September in strokes gained approach. Not a whole lot else that I want to do in terms of overview for Fantasy National. We can take a look at par 4s, 400, 450, just because there are so many holes of that length across all 3 courses. And again, this will give you a decent idea at who to look at to start your research. So again, starting from the Fortinet to the Tournament of Champions, your top par 4 performers from 400 to 450, Taylor Montgomery, Thomas Detry, Russell Knox, Andrew Putnam, who seemingly popped on a lot of things already tonight, Callum Tarrant, John Rahm, S.H. Kim, Brian Harmon, Ben Griffin, and Robbie Shelton. So Brian Harmon has popped a lot. Ben Griffin has popped a lot. Andrew Putnam has popped a lot on these filters already, these few metrics and filters that, at least in a grand or quick view, quick look, are pretty important metrics and filters for the Amex. So there's a few names to start your research off. The last thing we're going to do in Fantasy National, we're going to take a look at the tournament history for the past 5 years. Who are the top performers here at the Amex? In terms of a strokes gained total, it's Adam Hadwin. He has made the cut all 4 times in his 4 attempts in the past 5 years. Nothing worse than the T32. He does have 2 top 5s further back in history, 2019 and 18. Patrick Cantley's 3 for 3, and he's probably your strokes gained total leader per tournament. but he's not catching Adam Hadwin just yet because Hadwin has played another year. But no finish outside the top 10 for Patrick Cantlay here at the Amex in the past 3 years. Sung Jae has played this event marvelously. Everything, I mean, just very consistent. T10, T11, T12, and T12. So very consistent, very good. Andrew Putnam, again, he's popped on all of those filters that we looked at earlier. 5 for 5 in the past 5 years. John Rahm's a former champion in 2018. Siwoo won this event in 2021. Your defending champion, not here. Who did win this last year? It was, I'm going to have to cheat. Damn it. Hudson Swafford, that's right. Now over at Live, so not allowed to attempt to defend his title. Hudson Swafford, you're a defending champion, but Siwoo in 2021. 2020 was Andrew Landry. 2019, Adam Long. 2018, John Rahm. Let's see. Other players that have been a champion at this event. There were 2 others. Oh, Hudson Swafford won in 2017, and 2016 was Jason Duffner. I have only looked back to 2016 because 2016 is the start of the 3-course rota that's being used now, looking to Nicklaus Tournament course and PGA West. So there's a look at some of the players that have played this event extremely well. Let's see, Andrew Landry 4 for 5, a first, a second. He did miss the cut last year, but he's played it pretty well. Brian Harmon, Tony Finau 3 for 3, Cam Davis 3 for 3, Sam Ryder 5 for 5, but a lot of middling finishes. Nick Taylor 4 for 5, John Huh 4 for 5. So lots of success up there. Then when you look at the other end of the spectrum, these players, for whatever reason, have not played well here. Martin Traynor, Sung Kang, you have Bryce Garnett, Jimmy Walker's only 1 for 4, Bill Haas 0 for 5, Danny Lee 0 for 4, Peter Malnati 1 for 5, Ryan Armour has struggled, Bo Hosler has struggled, Martin Laird has struggled. Party Marty has struggled here with this being a ball strikers course. It's interesting to see, but he has struggled here. Chris Stroud, Zach Blair, Nate Lashley, who's coming off a very good Sony, has struggled here. So there's some players, maybe not necessarily to avoid, but just for informational purposes, have just not played well here. All right. I think that's going to do it for the Fantasy National portion of the show. As I've mentioned, let's move on over to Microsoft Excel, see if we can't get a better look at some of the players and specifically what they've been good at here. So, reminder for those that are returning to watch and for those who are new, this is essentially the same tab that we just saw in Fantasy National, strokes gained total, broken out by the individual statistic here specifically at the Amex. And I only go back 5 years, just like Fantasy National only shows 5 years, even though they collect the data. I only go back 5 years. Players just change. Players gain skill sets, lose skill sets. So I only go back 5 years. But this is their performance at the Amex specifically in the past 5 years. So you can see Lee Hodges has played the event once. In fact, let me zoom in for you all so you can get a better look at that. Lee Hodges has played this event once. There's Patrick Cantlay. 3 events. He's averaged a 7th place finish. In those 3 years, he's averaged a 3.0 in strokes gained approach, so on and so forth. There's John Rahm doing it off the tee. Sung Jae doing it a lot with putting. Lipsky, for as much as he is, his putter can fail him, he is putt well here. Just one event. Adam Hadwin doing it in the 2 major categories of approach and putting. So there's that. I'm actually going to remove the players that have only played it once. I do want to see if we can establish a pattern here of players that have played it often and played it successfully, what they've been generally good at. You can see a pretty high propensity of green here in strokes gained approach. No surprise, this is a ball striking course, but you are having to make some putts as well. Obvious statements sound obvious, but sometimes putting isn't necessarily the only way to win a tournament. So you have, let's look at the players that have averaged, say, a top, we'll do top 40. So you have an average of a 0.7, that's not very high. 1.6 in approach, a 0.7, and the putting looks like it's going to be the highest. Actually, no, 1.3. Looks like it's getting hurt by this negative here. So approach and putting with a lot of the emphasis on approach. For as much as distance average-wise, at least in relation to the tour average, look at your players that are generally playing this event well. Patrick Cantley is gaining distance. John Rahm, distance. Sung Jae's even positive here. Siwoo. Now, Andrew Putnam's never going to be positive in distance. He's just played this event well. A lot of it, again, around the putting. But Tony Finau, Cam Davis, Scotty Scheffler, even Justin Rose. These guys have the propensity to move it out there. So distance actually is a fairly critical part of success here at the Amex. I know it doesn't look like it from the graph in Fantasy National. Distance is going to be a factor. You're going to need a little bit of distance. We move to birdies and bogeys and eagles. There aren't a lot of eagles on these courses. It's just a birdie fest. So Patrick Cantley, more birdies gained than bogeys avoided. Same for John Rahm. I mean, all of these players, until you get to Scotty Scheffler. So all of these players, everybody who has averaged a top 20 finish or better and who has played it multiple times in the past 5 years, have been more adept at gaining birdies at the Amex than avoiding bogeys. Again, makes a lot of sense. If a tournament is easy, you're going to need to go low. You're going to need to go low. Versus if a tournament is difficult, you would want to avoid the bogeys. That keeps you ahead of the field. And even Scotty Scheffler, for being lower in terms of birdies, he's still within one. And then you start another small mini run of birdies over bogeys. So again, just birdies gained here. Birdies gained. So we're going to be looking at a lot of birdies or better again for the third week in a row. Par 3s, 4s, and 5s. We've seen that the par 3s are very important here, especially for the stadium course, because 3 of the 5 most difficult holes at the stadium course are par 3s. Generally speaking, the players who have played this event well have played the par 3s well. Let's see if we can't find a range. It isn't the 0 to 150. There aren't any holes that measure to that length on the scorecard. If we look at the the 150 to 175, you got a 0.4. That doesn't seem too high. 0.3. 0.6, and then this one isn't very high at all, just from looking at it. Yeah, 0. So it looks initially like it might be the 200 to 225, but there's only one hole that measures to that length at both the stadium course and the Nicklaus Tournament course. Now, there are three of the 4 par 3s measure to this length at La Quinta. I don't know how much that's affecting the total numbers here. It might just be total par 3 performance. I'm curious if I don't know, because you have across all 3 courses, you have 5 par 3s from here listed at this length on the scorecard, 2 here and 5 here. So, like I said, I was thinking it was going to be the 150, 175. It could be a combination of both. Really, it's a lot of strokes gained par 3 when you think about it. So it'll be interesting to see when we go through prior leaderboards tomorrow and we look at some specific course statistics, if there's a specific range that pops up. But right now it's looking just like strokes gained par 3. Moving to par 4s, I don't want to say they're mitigated. I mean, Patrick Cantlay is averaging 7.5 per year here at the Amex. But some of these numbers just aren't that high for your players that are finishing so well at the Amex. And you see, if there is a length, like we talked about, it's the 400 to 450, just due to the prevalence, the sheer amount of number of holes that fall into this range across the entirety of the tournament. You have 12 that fall here, at least on the scorecard. And of course, when tees and pins move around, you know, there's a lot that's going to be in here. So on the scorecards for all 3 courses, you have 1 here, 9, 12, and 8. So 40% of your par 4s fall from 400 to 450. And then 9 and 8. So, okay. Yep, makes sense. 400 to 450 is where we're going to start a lot of our research this week with the par 4s at the Amex. And then in terms of par 5s, I don't know how much we're going to focus on a particular length. You have 75% of them fall between this range here. So 8 of the 12 across all 3 courses fall into this range. That's an average of a 1.1. That's a 0.7. So maybe there is a bit of a statistical advantage or significance here. Again, 75% fall to this range, 25% fall to this range. Now, yes, there is data here in this range from the 600 to 650, but there are no holes on the scorecard that measure to here. This is just when they move tees and pins around and stuff. So perhaps 500 to 550, but I'm more so thinking just total par 5s. Would be curious to hear from you all, what you all think. I'm still thinking 500 to 550. Last couple things. Proximity. I didn't think proximity would be a pretty big deal, and really there's not a whole lot of green in terms of total procs. 75 to 100, there's a massive amount of approach shots that come from here or in regards to the average tour event or tour course, but it doesn't look like it is significant in terms of numbers. And then the most prevalent proximity range is 150 to 175. It's negative. For the players that have played this event the best, it's negative. So I don't know how much proximity is actually going to matter. I don't think it's going to matter too much. So there's a look at some specific player data in terms of performance at the Amex. I will bring back everybody into view here. So Zalatoris in his 1 year, Lipsky in his 1 year, Alex Smalley, Grayson Sigg, and so on. So you can get a good look at that data. But just a little bit of a preview for tomorrow, especially if you decide to join me on Twitch. I've gathered the form for the winners, and I've put together the finish matrix for the previous winners. So I will go ahead and show you the winner matrix. This is simply in the years that the Amex has been here, Hudson Swafford 2022, what did he do the years leading up to it? See if we can find if prior form is a big factor for winners and such. I don't see too much, honestly. Hudson Swafford had missed the cut the previous 2 years, and he was okay, I guess. I mean, he did have a top 25 before he won in 2017, but not a whole lot of success. Siwoo didn't play it often, but he had played it well. Andrew Landry had played it very well leading up to his win. Adam Long, it was his first time seeing the course. So there's not a lot of consistency here in terms of winners and their form leading up to their win. Some players hadn't played it at all, like Adam Long in 2019. Some had played it pretty darn well, like Andrew Landry. Some players hadn't played it well for a couple of years leading into it, so not a lot of consistency. But we're definitely going to take a look at that tomorrow at Twitch. See if we can't find some patterns from previous winners, and see who in the field this year qualifies under that specific list of criteria of a pattern. Siwoo did not match the criteria that I found for the Sony. He had played in the Tournament of Champions, so that immediately knocked him out of that consideration. But John Rahm did qualify for the pattern that I had found for the Tournament of Champions. So we'll see if we can't get our percentage above 50% for the year. But that's going to do it for the initial research show tonight. Astro, thanks for jumping in Twitch chat. You are welcome anytime. Much appreciated. If you are very new here or new to me in general, I am live Sunday, Monday, and Wednesday evening at 9 p.m. Eastern. And then on Monday mornings, I try to do Tuesday mornings. Sometimes those are hit and miss, but I am always live on Monday mornings at 10:30 a.m. Eastern, and 10:30 a.m. is over on Twitch, where I do a whole lot of in-depth research. I also take a look back at the previous week and show my mixed condition model, show the lineups that I played, and give myself a critique in that regard. So hopefully you think about joining on those shows or for those shows as well. But thanks to everyone who tunes in and watches and listens, supports the channel, jumps in chat, likes the videos, subscribes to the channel. I really appreciate it. I love what I do, being able to give you golf from an analytical, statistical mind, and trying to win a little money in the process. So for all of the wagers that you had made this past week for the Sony Open, for all of the DFS contests that you had entered this past week at the Sony Open, and until I see you tomorrow night for the Data Dive show, may all your bets be profitable.